Hey, what's going on YouTube? So today I'm going to showcase an endgame staff Elemental Catalyst Necromancer build, updated for the Necrom and Update 39 DLC patch. This was a subscriber requested build and I tried to make it as easy as possible to keep up Elemental Catalyst. And this build is capable of pulling over like 103k on the parse dummy and is viable and tailored for your group content journey. As with all endgame builds, it will be a group focused build that revolves around using trial or best in slot gear, so it's not a beginner or solo friendly build. Furthermore, please use these builds as a baseline, as different situations and scenarios will require different gear sets and skills. So just very quickly, Elemental Catalyst is a dungeon set that drops from the dungeon Stone Garden. It's really strong because it gives the group 15% crit damage, and the way that you get the 15% crit damage is whenever you deal damage with a flame, shock, or frost damage, you apply a stack of flame, shock, or frost weakness to the enemy for 3 seconds. Each stack of an elemental weakness increases their crit damage taken by 5%. So this set is often run on Necromancers because Necromancers have a dot for flame and lightning, and then wall or scalding can provide the fire damage. It's a really strong set for Necromancers and used in like every trial comp, so this is a really easy to use build that can really help you gain a good grasp of how to play an EC-Crow. So with that being said, here we go. So as per usual, starting off in the character sheet, I have 64 points in a Magicka and I'm running the Thief Mundus. For the race, we are a High Elf because we are a Magicka based build, so High Elves will probably be the best DPS choice. In terms of food, you have a few different options, but you can just run something like Clockwork Citrus Fillet for content, the cheaper option being Witch Mother's Potent Brew. And for parsing, you can either go Ghastly Eyeball, or you could just go straight green max mag food. You should be able to sustain it. For the potions, we're keeping this super simple, and we're just running Essence of Spell Power, partially because we don't have access to Major Prophecy. We do have Major Sorcery from Degen, but Prophecy is not available to us, so that's a reason in itself to run it. And another one is, if you're flexing out Degen, then Spell Power Potions are definitely a must. Keep in mind that medicinal use will ensure that you get the full duration, so make sure you have 3 points into that from the Alchemy skill line. So moving on to CP, for the blue tree, we're going to be running Exploiter, Biting Aura, Thaumaturge, and Wrathful Strikes. For content, if you don't have access to Off Balance or you don't want to run Exploiter because you need more crit damage, then running something like Backstabber or Fighting Finesse will be just fine. For the red tree, we're running the standard Celerity, Rejuvenation, Fortified, and Balanced Vitality. Moving on to the gear, so for this build I chose to front bar Elemental Catalyst and then just run another set on the body with a monster set and an arena weapon. So for the front bar, we have an Inferno Staff of the Catalyst, charged with a poison damage enchant. On the back bar, we're running Maelstrom Inferno, infused with a weapon damage enchant. For the head and shoulder slots, we have 2 pieces of Zon, both in Divines with Max Mag. And for the body, we're running 5 pieces of just Reliquin, all Divines in Max Mag. And for the jewelry, we're just running 3 pieces of Elemental Catalyst, all traded in Bloodthirsty with weapon and spell damage enchants. And for the skills, we're going to be running Stalking Blastbones. This is the bread and butter of Necros. Make sure you cast this every 2 or 3 skills if you're playing at range. Force Pulse, we're using this as our spammable because this does proc all 3 elements at once. So it's a good filler and a good opener so that you can instantly start with EC on whatever you're fighting. Barb Trap, because hemorrhaging is strong and gives us access to Fighters Guild passive. Mystic Siphon, this is our lightning damage and also gives you a decent amount of recovery. Degen, just another dot, this is kind of like a flex spot. Flawless Dawnbreaker on the front bar for the little extra DPS. We're not using this, we're using our back bar ult. For the back bar, we're running Avid Boneyard for the frost damage for the EC, and also has a good synergy that does decent damage as well. Unstable Wall for the flame damage. I do recommend that you can run the other morph of this. It will be bigger, it'll do less damage, but if you're fighting multiple targets, it'll ensure that more targets are covered with the fire element, just because the sheer size of the other morph, Blockade. Caltrops, because we do need to manage our mag somehow sometimes, so this is a good stam based dot. And also Necros with dots are really strong, so that's why we're running that. Scalding Rune, this is another flame damage. It also is a decent dot, and we're just using it as another damaging dot. Skeletal Archer to proc the recovery passives and also does decent damage. Shooting Star is our ultimate. In content, you probably want to run Colossus depending on your group, so keep that in mind. So for the rotation, I decided to make a static and dynamic rotation. So we're going with the dynamic one first. So the rhythm is always going to be Blast Bones and then followed by 2 or 3 skills. 3 skills if you're at range and 2 if you're close enough. So the dot priority is going to go Boneyard, Wall, Siphon, and then Trap, Archer, Caltrops, Scalding Rune, and Degen. And then whenever your ultimate Shooting Star is ready, you could just drop that whenever. And then Force Pulse is going to be your spammable to fill in the gaps when you don't have anything to recast. And for content, you're probably going to be using Colossus rather than Shooting Star. And always prioritize keeping EC dots whenever you start a rotation or you pick it back up, because your job is to apply EC, so you want to keep uptimes as high as possible. So for the static rotation, we're going to be basing it off of our Blast Bones again. And I made this static rotation keeping in mind that I was going to cast 2 skills after the Blast Bones and not 3. So if you are playing at a farther range, then you might have to adjust this. So Blast Bones, Avid Boneyard, and then Wall is going to be the first part. And then Blast Bones, Trap, and Mystic Siphon. Blast Bones, Caltrops, and Scalding Rune. Blast Bones, Archer, and Degen. And then Blast Bones, Boneyard, and Wall again. The reason you do this twice in this rotation is because they are 10-second dots, while all the other dots except for Caltrops are 20 seconds plus. And then we're going to go Blast Bones and then 2 Force Pulse casts, and then Blast Bones and 2 Force Pulse casts, and then that is like the whole rotation itself. So you can just rinse and repeat from the beginning, which is the Blast Bones, Boneyard, and Wall, and then you can just keep going. For closing thoughts, first I think I should talk about flex spots. So Degen and probably Scalding Rune or maybe Caltrops could be used as a flex spot for whatever you may need for certain situations. For the static rotation, if you do swap a skill out, you could just move the rotation faster, or just implement another Force Pulse into the skill that you replaced if it's not a damaging skill. For this build, we are running Elemental Catalyst on the front bar, which is kind of going to be a little bit harder than bodying it, but since we are running Force Pulses that are spammable, our uptime should be pretty good. So the reason why we're running Force Pulse instead of running the Skull spammable is because it does proc all 3 elements, so it can be really useful, especially when you're applying Elemental Catalyst to more than one enemy and they're outside the radius of your dots. I also want to take this time to say that light attacks from Inferno Staffs do proc flame damage, but Blast Bones does not count for any of the elements. So for gear alternatives, if you need to run light armor, then you can run something like Whirl. I see a lot of groups also running like Martial Knowledge on their Elemental Catalyst as a way to get 2 buff sets on one character. So if you want to go that route, that's still an option. For mythics, we aren't running a mythic for this build, but you can definitely take out Zons and run a mythic. Something like Mora would be really strong. Velothi works okay, and then Spalder is often a good choice. Oftentimes, many groups will ask the Elemental Catalyst Crow to wear Spalder because of their sustain and the fact that they are doing probably, one of the least amount of damage compared to all the Arcanists and all the full damage dealers you have in the group. For arena weapons, since we're running Maelstrom Inferno, you can swap this out for something like Maelstrom or Dragonstar Bow. I did also test Maelstrom 2-hander. It was pretty close in damage, and I think that wraps it up. As always, thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, or better yet, come join our Discord. Link is in the description. I will have a written guide linked in the description for those who would prefer that instead. And as always, thank you to my YouTube members. If you want to help me support my content creation, please consider becoming a member. And as always, thanks again, and see you in the next one.